In the heart of an ancient forest, where morning light touched the moss-like gold, there stood a tree named Yura. Unlike the others, Yura didn't rise tall and straight. A storm early in its life had bent its trunk. Though it kept growing, it did so at an angle, curved, uneven, different. Around Yura, towering pines stretched perfectly skyward, proud and symmetrical. They whispered in the wind, not unkindly but loud enough. Why grow like that? Such a strange shape. Yura tried to stand taller to fit in among the uniformed giants. But no matter how much it reached, the curve remained. Years passed. Birds landed on branches above, but rarely on Yura. Sunlight favored the tall. Rain pooled in places Yura couldn't reach. And though its roots held strong, doubt crept in like ivy. It wondered quietly, if I don't look like the others, do I even belong? The forest never answered. Only the wind, always moving, seemed to pause near Yura. One spring morning, a woodcutter entered the forest with red paint and purpose. He inspected the tall, straight pines, tapping trunks and nodding to himself. Strong, symmetrical, good timber, he said. With each mark, a tree was chosen. Yura watched silently. The man passed by him without pause. No mark, no glance. At first, Yura felt relief. He wouldn't be taken, but that relief quickly turned sour. Even for their axes, I'm not good enough, he thought. That night, a fierce storm swept through the forest. Wind howled, branches snapped, trees once praised for their height fell hard to the ground. When dawn came, light poured into new gaps between stumps, and there stood Yura, curved but standing. Alone, yes, but rooted. Birds returned first, then squirrels. Even sunlight found him. And for the first time, Yura didn't envy the tall. He simply breathed, letting the wind wrap around his bent trunk like something sacred. Days passed. With the tall trees gone, animals began to gather beneath Yura's crooked branches. Squirrels nested, birds sang. Even children from the nearby village came to rest in his shade. One afternoon, an old woman leaned against his trunk, eyes closed. "You've seen much," she whispered. Yura, though silent, felt something shift within him. He had never been chosen for his strength or height, but now he was chosen for comfort, for quiet. A traveler passed by, sketched him in a notebook, and wrote, "The most beautiful tree bends with grace." Yura didn't grow taller. He didn't become straight. But for the first time, he stopped wishing to be something else, and in that stillness, he found something rare, belonging. Not because he looked like the others, but because he didn't. He realized the bend wasn't a flaw. It was a story. And that story had made room for life. If this story made you feel seen, subscribe and hit the bell. Maybe your difference is your gift. Seasons passed, rain softened the ground, sunlight warmed Yura's leaves. The forest changed, but Yura remained, a quiet witness to it all. New saplings emerged around him. One in particular grew fast and tall, eager to reach the sky. It often looked at Yura with confusion. "Why do you grow like that?" it asked. Yura smiled gently. "Like what?" "Bent, twisted." Yura paused before answering. "Because the storm asked me a question, and this is how I replied." The young tree blinked. "But won't people say you're wrong?" Yura replied, "People said that long ago. I listened, and then I lived." The sapling didn't know what to say. It grew taller each day, but something about Yura's roots felt stronger, more certain. "Do you wish you grew like us?" the sapling asked one morning. Yura swayed with the breeze. "I used to. But now I see, I was never meant to reach their height. I was meant to hold something deeper, Years passed. The young tree grew tall, admired by birds, praised by villagers who visited the forest. So straight, they said, so perfect. But when heavy winds swept through the land, it shook violently. Its roots, though deep, had never learned to flex. One stormy night the wind roared. Branches snapped, trees crashed. And when morning came, silence lingered. Many had fallen, but Ura remained. Curved, yes, but still standing. The young tree, now leaning and cracked, whispered, "Why didn't you fall?" Ura answered softly, "Because I bent when others broke, and I stopped trying to grow like them a long time ago." The young tree said nothing. It only listened. The forest was quieter now, less crowded. But in that quiet, something new began to grow. Respect, not for height or perfection, but for resilience, for difference, for the strength hidden in those who looked nothing like the rest. As seasons changed, Ura welcomed more life. Moss covered his roots, birds nested in his crooked arms, vines curled around his trunk like gentle hands. Artists came to paint him, poets came to write, not because he was tallest, but because he was real. One morning a small child wandered into the forest and stood before him. "Why do you look different?" she asked. Ura replied, "Because I didn't grow to impress, I grew to survive." The child touched his bark and whispered, "You're my favorite." In that moment, Ura didn't feel twisted. He felt seen, chosen. That spring, a group of students hiked through the forest with notebooks in hand. Most admired the tall trees. But one paused at Ura, staring in silence. Later, the teacher read the students' words aloud. "This tree looks like it fought something, and won." Ura, though still and rooted, felt something shift inside. His difference wasn't something to hide. It was something to honor. The forest aged. Storms came, roots deepened, and seasons passed like whispers. Some trees fell, others rose, but Ura stood, curved, quiet, full of memory. One evening, a young sapling nearby asked, "Will they always see you as different?" Ura replied, "Perhaps, but difference is where stories begin." The sapling hesitated. "I don't want to grow like everyone else." Ura's branches swayed softly. "Then don't chase their shape. Grow in your own direction. The forest needs many forms." The young tree leaned slightly toward him, curious. "Weren't you ever afraid of not being enough?" Ura answered, "I was, but then I realized I wasn't meant to be them. I was meant to be me." The wind passed between them like a conversation. That night, as stars blinked above, the young tree dreamed of bending, not in defeat, but in strength. And Ura, old and rooted, smiled into the dark. Not because he was proud, but because he was understood. Years passed, the forest changed. New trees rose, old ones faded, but Ura remained. Travelers no longer sought the tallest trees. They came for the one that grew differently. Artists painted him. Children wrapped arms around his trunk. Writers called him the tree with memory. Even those who once mocked his shape now leaned against him for shade. His bend had become a symbol of resilience, of beauty, born from struggle. One foggy morning, a young girl stood before Ura and whispered, "You're not like the others." And for the first time, Ura replied in his own quiet way, through the rustle of leaves and the warmth of shelter. He no longer needed to fit in. He had grown into himself. The wind carried his story through the branches, not as a lesson, but as a mirror. And now, before this tale fades into silence, ask yourself one thing. Are you trying to grow like them, or are you ready to grow like you?